Let's begin by looking at configuration management as a whole and why it's very important. Previously in our demonstrations, we were deploying virtual machines, we were configuring VNets, subnets, etc. But the virtual machine, when it's deployed, doesn't really have our software packages installed on it. Perhaps we bake them into the template, but then how do we keep them consistent? How do we add additional configurations on top of them? And so if you look at the virtual machine, we break it down into two main sections of configuration management. We have our OS settings, our antivirus and backup agents, infrastructure monitoring. This section is really focused around infrastructure settings, things that your Windows and Linux team will really care about for every virtual machine that gets deployed. On top of that, we have all of our application settings, application installations, app configuration settings, and application monitoring, amongst others. These are things that our middleware and application teams care about as well. In order to get a consistent set of configuration for your entire machine, we utilize a variety of configuration management tools to achieve this goal. This means that if we needed to redeploy the machine, as long as everything is set up in configuration management, we know that deploying the machine again, we will get the same machine over and over again. This is that concept of cattle versus pets that you hear so often in the IT industry today. If we look at this now from an end-to-end process, think about you might use an ARM template or Terraform or some other tool to deploy your infrastructure first of all, and we'll obviously cover ARM templates later on in the course. But think about it this way, the ARM template and infrastructure automation tools go out, deploy all of your infrastructure resources, network, storage accounts, network security groups, and your virtual machines. Everything we've done here is outside of the virtual machine itself. Now we want to configure inside of the virtual machine on top of the operating system. The virtual machine goes off and we use a variety of extensions here. VM extensions allow us to use things like DSC, custom script extensions, etc. to now configure inside of the virtual machine. Ideally, you'll use the VM extensions that make the most sense for your particular environment. If you're a heavy Puppet user and have a lot of teams using Puppet, it might make sense for you to all standardize around Puppet. Perhaps you'll use Chef, perhaps you'll use DSC, and maybe combine that with some scripts on top of it. The choice is really up to you, but there are multiple ways to achieve the same goal. If we look now at configuration management, these are the three extensions that are provided by Microsoft Azure. We have our PowerShell extension, which obviously we'll go over DSC in a moment, but we also have Puppet and Chef extensions available as well. The key difference being that Puppet and Chef are enterprise-level configuration management for multiple nodes. PowerShell DSC, while very good and tactical for us to go and deploy a configuration, doesn't have the same holistic management that something like a Puppet and Chef might have. So if you're looking more at the enterprise across on-prem, public cloud, Windows and Linux, definitely take more of a look at Puppet and Chef. But if you really just want to get a configuration up and running, PowerShell DSC is still a really good tool for you. One last thing to mention, PowerShell DSC scripts can be used inside tools like Puppet and Chef as well. So if you've got a configuration you've configured in PowerShell DSC, there's nothing stopping you porting that over and using that in Puppet or Chef. Now, while Puppet and Chef are certainly out of scope for this course, Microsoft does expect you to know PowerShell DSC and some of the key components. So to begin with, there are three major components with PowerShell DSC. Configurations, these are your declarative PowerShell scripts which define and configure instances of your resources. The next piece we have are the resources themselves. Microsoft refers to these as the make it so part of DSC. They contain the code that put and keep the target of a configuration in the specified state that you've decided on in your configuration. And then finally, we have the logical configuration manager. This is the engine behind DSC. It facilitates the interaction between resources and configurations in a sense to keep the system at the specified state. Now, if we look at a PowerShell DSC example, on the left-hand side, you see some code for deploying IIS and ASP.NET 4.5. First of all, we have the name of our configuration. In this case, it's Skyline's website. Next, we specify the target the configuration applies to. In this example, we're using localhost. Moving on, we have a declarative statement about what we are configuring. In this case, we're saying install IIS. This is the Windows feature, same as if you went into Windows and turned on the IIS feature from the server manager. We have another one here, a second declarative statement, this time to ensure .NET 4.5 is installed, and then we have our curly braces to close out the configuration. That's pretty much what you need to know for the exam. Look at configurations like this and be able to interpret what they're trying to do. We'll see in the demonstration that follows how to take one of these configurations and apply it to a virtual machine.